Well, welcome back to the Bulldog Insider. We're pleased to be joined now by Jackson Moore, publisher of BarkBoard.com. He's the go-to source for Fresno State football and basketball recruiting. Jackson, the early signing period starts December 19th, a week from Wednesday. But the Bulldogs will be in Las Vegas this week, so this past weekend was pretty much their last big push. What can you tell us about who they're targeting and who was on campus?
Yeah, well, most schools get 3 weekends, and the Fresno State was instead in the conference championship game the week prior. So 3 weekends turned into 1. They brought in 15 or so recruits, a big number. About half of those guys were committed already. And this was their one chance to come in, get wined and dine a little bit and seal the deal with those guys. But the others, a lot of key players that they're going after. Right now, we know 2 committed, a pair of tight ends that are junior college guys. Raymond Powell's out of Arizona and Juan Rodriguez out of Butte College. Those 2 guys are top 10 junior college tight end recruits, and they're going to be impact guys right away. Obviously, if they're junior college guys, you're looking at those guys right away. Handful of local players, Josh Kelly and Leonard Glass at Memorial. You had Randy Jordan, of course, at Tulare Union, who's committed. He's tried to do what he could. They had a game. All 3 of those guys had a game on Saturday, but he's already committed. So a big group, a few crucial recruits that they could bring in here, and there's only 10 days until the early signing period. So we know 2 have committed, and I expect we'll see quite a few more either tomorrow or within the next 10 days.
I'll ask you about the Memorial guys in a second. This year's team, Jackson, is saying goodbye to 28 seniors, potentially 29 if Jeff Allison leaves early for the draft. But then he wouldn't be a senior, he'd be a draft-eligible junior. What is the biggest area of need for the Bulldogs?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few spots where Bulldogs are losing a lot of players. You look at linebacker in particular. If Allison leaves, they're going to lose all 3 of those guys. At receiver, there's 8 seniors. Some of those guys are walk-ons, but still, 8's a lot. So they've already addressed some of those issues, though. They've got 2 tight ends in the class. They've got 2 receivers, one of them being Jalen Cropper, 4-star local guy that sent shockwaves around the valley when he made that decision, and he's a guy you figure can come in right away. For me right now, just because Fresno State doesn't have any commits there, probably offensive line. There's 4 seniors starting in the Vegas Bowl on Saturday, and we haven't seen any offensive line recruits come in, so maybe we'll see a junior college guy come in last minute, maybe give them 1 extra player to look at in next year's lineup, which is going to be totally different.
You mentioned Cropper. I'm going to ask you about him in a second as well. With Marcus McMaryion leaving, the Dogs will have a new quarterback next season. We know the kid from Calabasas, Jaden Casey, is committed to the class of 2020, but right now, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no quarterback commit for the class of 2019.
That's correct, and right now there's really no outstanding offers either. Alec Trujillo was one player that they offered at one point, and he committed to San Jose State, the quarterback at San Joaquin Memorial. But the Bulldogs were going after the junior college quarterback, Hunter Riquet, who's actually here now. They weren't really expecting him to be on campus till next year, so he's kind of the de facto, I think, quarterback of this class. And you bring back 4 in this year's from this year's team to next year, and you have one 2020 recruit locked up already. I don't think we'll see a quarterback, maybe a preferred walk-on to give him an extra body.
Jackson, when it comes to recruiting the Valley, we know that is a high priority for Coach Tedford. 2 weeks ago, you mentioned Jalen Cropper. Jalen Cropper committed to the Dogs, standout player at Buchanan who transferred from Sanger. How big of a get is this for Fresno State?
It's huge, particularly up until the last probably 24 hours before his decision. All the reporters, at least, that were nationally trying to get a hold of Cropper, talking to the different sources, they were all saying Utah. And whether it was just deep down in his heart the whole time or something happened where he was at the game the night before his decision, he decided on Fresno State. And that really is a game changer because ultimately you've got guys like Kendall Milton, 5-star recruit who has Fresno State on his list, but it's a long shot. This kind of wakes those guys up to maybe think Fresno State more realistically, and particularly the 3-star guys. As we mentioned, there's 2 at Memorial that were committed elsewhere, and now they're on official visits to Fresno State this weekend. They've totally kind of changed their ideas as well, and you may see some of those guys flip Fresno State's way, partly because of this move, and maybe see more Valley guys team up in next year's class.
Yeah, that's Josh Kelly scoring a touchdown last night in the state playoff game between Memorial and Tulare. Now, we talk about Josh Kelly. This is Leonard Glass right here, and Alec Trujillo. You mentioned that as well. Glass was committed to Iowa State, but what was it, a week and a half ago, he just tweets out a couple of emojis. One of them's a bulldog face, and there was a heart. So that makes us think that he might be reopening his commitment. What are the chances the Bulldogs get 1 or more of these Panthers?
I think it's high. Coach Tedford, they got on the plane after the Boise State championship game and got into Fresno. His first stops, Jalen Cropper and Josh Kelly. So that shows how much they think of Kelly, how big of a need they think he can be on this team and what they want from him. So I would be surprised. His only other offer right now, since he decommitted from San Jose State originally, is Hawaii. So there's not a ton of options for him to go elsewhere that we know of. But Fresno State seems to be like a good fit, and they offered after he committed to San Jose State. And then Glass as well. Looks like Iowa State or Fresno State is probably going to be his landing spot. So not just the ties locally, but kind of the odds of where those guys are looking look good for Fresno State.
Jeff Tedford's name has been mentioned for a lot of high-profile jobs. That's what happens when you win. Have you seen that impact this year's recruiting class?
Negatively?
Or positively?
I think the message they've gotten out there is clear that he's Bulldog born, Bulldog bred. He's here for the long haul, and I think maybe more. We'll see how much of the staff of assistants sticks around. There's a lot of guys, and they all have built really impressive resumes over these last 2 years. The interesting thing, though, is that most of these recruits that they're after right now are probably going to sign before all that movement happens. So they might be a little bit stuck either way, but I don't foresee a whole lot of movement, especially Coach Tedford. The message is out there that he's here to build this thing for the long haul, and the local recruits are starting to kind of turn that tide and buy into that.
Lastly, Jackson, I noticed the Dogs offered Ocho Cinco's son. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he's committed to Arizona State right now, so if the Bulldogs win the Vegas Bowl, that might catch his eye, and maybe he'll give the Bulldogs another look.
He's Jackson Moore, publisher of BarkBoard.com. He will be in Las Vegas for the bowl game. We're sending Julia Lopez. Jackson, we appreciate the time today. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.